People often say that siblings introduce the first taste of difference, but I've never wanted it to be that way. Perhaps it's because I grew up as an only child. I hope my husband and his siblings will always get along well. My name is Malia, and at 35 years old, I'm a housewife juggling household chores, childcare, and a part-time job. It's been nearly a decade since I married Albert, whom I met at work. We've been blessed with 2 children during this time. Albert has always been kind, a loving husband, and a devoted father since our dating days. Our family gets along harmoniously, and every day is typically peaceful and happy. Then, one day, a storm swept into our lives. The cause of this storm was my brother-in-law's fiancée. We met her for the first time last Christmas, and she was quite an unusual presence. It didn't bother me that she didn't lift a finger at my in-laws' house. After all, she wasn't yet married into the family, and my in-laws aren't the type to expect help just because someone is a daughter-in-law. Personally, I helped my mother-in-law, and naturally, Albert pitched in. My father-in-law and brother-in-law entertained the children. Meanwhile, my brother-in-law's fiancée spent the entire time glued to her phone. Even during Christmas greetings and meals, she never put it down. There was hardly any conversation beyond initial pleasantries. Frankly, I wondered why she had even come. I assumed she had been dragged along reluctantly by my brother-in-law and was in a bad mood. I really wanted to connect with her, so I insisted he bring her, but she seemed disinterested. Half a year after that Christmas, Dusty is getting married, my husband mentioned as he changed clothes after returning from work. Dusty is my brother-in-law. He's finally decided to tie the knot. Is it with that girl? I asked. Yeah, seems like it, he replied. He's already 30 years old, and marriage is a milestone. But I'm worried about her character. Marriage changes a lot compared to just dating. I wonder if they'll have a peaceful married life. One day, my husband returned home looking exhausted. Welcome back. Work seemed tough today, I asked. No, it wasn't work, he sighed. I ran into Dusty's girlfriend, Ditette, at the office. What was she doing there? I inquired. She came to see me, he explained. She said she had something important to discuss. What did she want to talk about? I asked, curious. Well, about that, he hesitated. I was surprised she came to my office, but even more surprised by what she asked for. What did she ask for? She wanted help with wedding expenses, he revealed, or, if that's not possible, some pocket money. What? I don't understand, I replied, bewildered by the request. I couldn't grasp the situation. The cost of a wedding should be reasonable if managed within one's means. Dusty has a stable job and earns well. What baffled me more was the request for pocket money. Why would my husband give money to Dusty's girlfriend? To my surprise, my husband hesitated before continuing, reluctantly sharing. Well, she also asked if we could go out for a meal or something, just the 2 of us. What? Why? I exclaimed, taken aback. She said she wants to build a good relationship with me because I'll be her brother-in-law, he explained. But if that's her intention, she should come over to our house. I declined the idea of meeting her alone. I'm frustrated. Why does she need to meet you alone to build rapport? She and Dusty should simply visit us. I vented, recalling how she had been glued to her phone the entire Christmas gathering. The request for financial help and a private meeting didn't sit well with me. Unable to stay silent, I decided to confront Dusty. I asked him to come over, feeling compelled to discuss something important. I laid out everything about Ditette's behavior, hoping he'd understand. Dee would never ask for such things, Dusty insisted, refusing to believe it. Why would she ask my brother for money and suggest meeting alone? It doesn't make sense. But it's true, I insisted. I believe her. I trust Dee, Dusty asserted firmly, exchanging a troubled glance with my husband. Trusting your partner is crucial in marriage. You shouldn't marry someone you can't trust. It's normal to prioritize and believe in your fiancé over your own brother. I only heard about this from my husband, but I didn't doubt him for a moment. Trust forms the foundation of a marriage. Ultimately, Dusty wasn't to blame. He left our house somewhat upset after our discussion. My husband and I decided that unless something more serious occurred, we wouldn't intervene further. All we wanted was Dusty's happiness. However, Danette's behavior didn't cease. Having resigned from her job in anticipation of marriage, she seemed to be bored. Almost every day, she started visiting my husband during his lunch break at his office. She also sent him messages on his phone. He instructed the receptionist not to allow her in and ignored her messages. He reported each incident to Dusty, but Dusty refused to believe it. He was so infatuated with Danette that he dismissed my husband's concerns. "Let's go out for a meal. Just the two of us. Could you give your dear sister-in-law some pocket money? I feel so lonely without Albert by my side," her messages read. Even after my husband sent screenshots of these inappropriate messages to Dusty, he still refused to accept the truth. Then, I received a call from Dusty. "What kind of harassment is this? Sending me these fake messages? Do you really want to ruin my happiness?" he shouted angrily. My husband was deeply hurt by his brother's accusations. They had always been close, and seeing his brother turn against him was devastating. Unable to bear seeing my husband like this, I messaged Danette, asking her to stop harassing him. Her reply shocked me. "What does it have to do with you?" I couldn't believe she had addressed me so disrespectfully. I feared Dusty's impending marriage might end unhappily, but no matter what we said, Dusty refused to listen to my husband. Their once strong brotherly bond was crumbling, and my husband's loneliness was heartbreaking to witness. I had been wanting to sit down with Danette and have a discussion, the four of us, Dusty, my husband, and myself, but time passed without that opportunity arising. One day, while my husband was away on a business trip, Dusty unexpectedly called our home phone. Surprised by the unusual call, I picked up and heard his loud voice. "Malia, are you still at home? What are you doing?" he asked urgently. "I was just hanging up laundry, but what's going on?" I replied, caught off guard. "Is Danette with you? She's saying if she's not attending the wedding, you need to pay the cancellation fee." Dusty's words stunned me into silence. I struggled to comprehend what I had just heard. Wedding, absence, cancellation fee. Wait, what are you talking about? "There's a wedding today," I nearly shouted, trying to grasp the situation. Dusty sounded surprised by my panicked response. "Yes, I sent you an invitation. You marked 'will attend' on the reply card." "We never received it." "That's impossible," I exclaimed, feeling a surge of confusion and frustration. After some back and forth about the missing invitation, Dusty seemed pressed for time. "Forget about today. If Albert is on a business trip, it can't be helped. Let's talk properly later," he said, and then hung up. I stood there in disbelief. A wedding? Dusty's wedding, today. I frantically called my husband, hoping he would answer despite being on his business trip. "Honey, I think something terrible has happened. I can't understand," I started, my voice trembling with anxiety. After taking a deep breath, I continued. A few days later, I recounted the phone call with Dusty to my husband after he returned from his business trip. We decided to visit Dusty's new apartment. As we stood outside the rental, we rang the intercom repeatedly with no response. Finally, to our surprise, Danette, now my sister-in-law, answered. "We don't want to talk to rude people who cancel a wedding at the last minute and then refuse to pay the cancellation fee." "Leave," she demanded sharply. Unwilling to leave without seeing Dusty, we persisted, requesting Danette to let him come out. However, she refused. Unable to hold back any longer, my husband called Dusty, who appeared to be occupied in the bathroom but hurried out upon our insistence. Finally, Dusty emerged, and we were able to approach the door of his new home. Just as the door opened, Danette reappeared. "Danette, I'm sorry we couldn't attend the wedding, but we really need to talk," I started. "There's nothing to talk about. You're just going to make excuses, right? Don't think an apology will suffice after you embarrass us at our wedding," Danette retorted coldly. "We've brought the wedding gift we couldn't deliver. Please come in," my husband interjected, attempting to ease the tension. To our surprise, Danette's attitude quickly shifted upon seeing the gift. My husband and I exchanged relieved smiles. Dusty, who had been unable to approach due to Danette blocking the door, finally joined us. "Dusty, we're sorry we couldn't be at your wedding, but about the invitation," I began, wanting to clarify. "Why did you lie about not receiving it? If you couldn't make it because of work, you could have just told me," Dusty questioned, clearly confused. "We really never received the invitation." "That's impossible," my husband insisted. The debate about the missing invitation resumed until my husband remembered the reply postcard. "Here it is. The address on it isn't from around here. It's from a local post office, likely near our area. Our house is about a 20-minute drive from Dusty's apartment, and if it were from our neighborhood, it would have a different post office address," my husband explained, showing the postcard. "Did you have the local post office handle this?" Dusty asked, puzzled. "Why would it complicate things like that?" My husband replied quickly. Then who handled the invocations? I inquired, looking at Dusty. Deet did, Dusty replied reluctantly, confirming my suspicion. I had suspected that Danette had taken charge of most of the wedding preparations while Dusty focused on work. She had handled the invitations, and now it seemed like a deception. Something had bothered me since I first saw the postcard. The names written on it, mine and my husband's, were clearly not in our handwriting. My husband had a talent for calligraphy and wrote beautifully, whereas I struggled with my own handwriting, which was far from elegant. Normally, I relied on my husband to fill out forms and documents for our children's school due to my poor penmanship. The names on the postcard were written in a cute, distinct style that was certainly not ours. I can't write in such a cute style. This handwriting, it's Danette's, I realized aloud, feeling a sense of disbelief that we hadn't noticed sooner. It was only now that Dusty also recognized the handwriting. Danette, what is the meaning of this? I don't know, Danette stammered, feigning innocence. It's clearly your handwriting. Realizing the truth, Dusty confronted Danette angrily. She appeared panicked and evasive. My husband stepped in to calm his brother, asking Danette quietly, "Why did you do this, Danette?" We admit it was our fault for not confirming the wedding date, but we believed the invitation would come, so we didn't bother to ask. I'm saddened that I missed my brother's big day, my husband explained, trying to understand. Why did you do it, Danette? Dusty demanded, his frustration evident. Initially scared, Danette hesitated before admitting, because you were in the way, Albert, attending the wedding, showing the messages I sent. I thought it would be troublesome. In the way, Dusty repeated incredulously. So you tried to set us up to protect yourself? Our parents and relatives scolded us, questioning why we prioritized work over my brother's wedding. They even criticized my wife as inconsiderate. Danette fell silent under the weight of her own admission. She had manipulated the situation to tarnish our reputation among relatives, hoping we might avoid family gatherings if they thought poorly of us. Never trust someone who calls themselves cute, Dusty remarked bitterly. That's what I should have realized. And now what? Danette retorted defensively. It's Dusty's fault for not earning enough. Her blunt words stunned us all. Until then, we had seen Danette as easygoing, but now we saw her true colors. My husband, Dusty, and I were left shocked and dismayed by her selfish actions. I want to be a housewife, relaxing at home, lunching at my favorite places. Dusty's salary won't allow that, I told Albert. An allowance is one thing, but why does she insist on meeting you alone? What's wrong with wanting to dine with a handsome man? Her defiant attitude left me speechless. Danette, perhaps overwhelmed, started tearing up. I expected Dusty to explode in anger, but instead, he sighed deeply. He seemed to be holding himself back, maintaining his composure. Slowly, he extended his hand to Danette, and she placed hers in his. Dusty, will you forgive me? She pleaded. He withdrew his hand abruptly. What are you misunderstanding, Danette? Just give it to me. What? What do you mean? Your mobile phone. Show it to me now, Danette protested. Dusty snatched the phone from her before she could react. After a moment of operating it, his face turned pale. Wow, he muttered, avoiding Danette's reaching hand as he held the phone high above her. You've been cheating, haven't you? At his words, my husband stepped forward and took the phone from Dusty easily. Given their similar height, his expression grew stern as he examined the screen. I see quite a few. What do you mean by this? My husband asked, showing me the phone screen. This is a violation of privacy, Danette shouted in anger, attempting to retrieve the phone. Dusty held her back. Wow, how many guys are there? He muttered, his eyes scanning the explicit messages on the screen. The chat application revealed conversations with multiple men, filled with suggestive content. Had fun today, let's do it again. Read one message. I'm free tomorrow since my boyfriend is working, said another. I need more stamina. Sneaking around is so exciting. Can't get enough with my boyfriend. How about a hotel tomorrow? These messages were just the tip of the iceberg. You're the worst, truly the worst, Danette yelled at us, but I couldn't help but think she was the lowest of the low. Finally, under our intense glares, Danette fell silent. I never thought I'd be considering divorce so soon after getting married. Dusty sighed heavily. Divorce? Danette panicked at his words. I wanted to ask her if she hadn't thought divorce was a possibility all along. Of course, I can't stay married to someone who cheats, Dusty continued. But wait, it was just for fun. You can see from the messages it was just play. Danette tried to defend herself. You think it's okay to be involved with other men if it's just play? My husband interjected. No, I don't. I won't do it anymore. I won't meet them again. Danette's slip of honesty made Dusty sigh once more. I know a lawyer. I'll introduce you, my husband offered gently, placing a comforting hand on Dusty's shoulder. Dusty looked at him with a tearful expression. Danette screamed as if it were the end of the world. For Dusty, it was a sad ending. I absolutely don't want a divorce, he muttered. For Danette, it must have seemed like the end of the world. She caused her own storm and ruined everything, I thought to myself, watching her distressed reaction. Later, Dusty came to our house, smiling and playing with our delighted sons. I've successfully divorced, he announced, his face looking refreshed. Det foolishly left messages and even photos on her phone, providing perfect evidence. The divorce ended with Dusty receiving compensation, my husband explained. Of course, Danette couldn't pay, so her parents deeply apologized and settled on her behalf, my husband continued. What happened to Danette? Dusty answered quietly. She's working from morning till night to repay her parents. They're keeping a strict eye on her so she won't escape. Dusty's face turned complex as he heard about his almost in-laws. It seems Danette will lead a very constrained life from now on. She wanted an easy life as a housewife, but that seems unlikely now. Don't underestimate housewives, my husband remarked. I can't imagine someone with such misconceptions managing to work properly. She's probably whining while working, Dusty added, reflecting on Danette's new reality. Well, it was tough, but it's good that you found out early. Think of it as a valuable life experience, my husband reassured Dusty. Yeah, I'll take my time, but eventually I'll start looking for someone else, my true soulmate, Dusty said with a hint of optimism. Dusty, you'll be fine. Keep it up, my husband encouraged him. I'm sorry for the trouble, and thank you, Dusty said gratefully. Don't mention it. Protecting my little brother is natural, my husband replied warmly. As I watched them share a laugh, I couldn't help but feel relieved. I was worried when things got tense, but brothers being close is best after all, I thought to myself. Mama, what's going on? My sons asked as they approached, looking puzzled. I smiled and placed my hands on both of their heads. You two always stay close like your dad and uncle, okay? Okay, Mama, they giggled in unison. Watching them play together, I couldn't help but smile warmly, cherishing the bond they shared. I've longed for children, but you're the reason we couldn't have them. My husband spat out, hurling those hurtful words at me after 20 years of marriage. In that moment, I realized I couldn't continue with him. His callousness cut deep and his mind was elsewhere, dreaming of a new life without me. It felt as if some divine eye had witnessed his cruelty. My name is Lisa, 45 years old, a secretary at a law firm. Our marriage, nearing 2 decades, had been modest and childless. Despite our shared desire for children, infertility plagued us, primarily my own struggles. I underwent treatments, exhausting myself physically, emotionally, and financially, only to face disappointment. When I turned 40, we conceded defeat. My husband's desire for children persisted, but I couldn't endure the pain and financial strain any longer. We decided to halt treatments and embrace a childless life, opting for luxury trips instead. Yet the pang of regret lingered, especially when confronted with images of children on TV or greeting cards. Even 5 years post-treatments, guilt and remorse gnawed at me. Then, a school reunion beckoned after a decade. My husband encouraged me to take a break, sensing it as a mini vacation. It felt like a temporary escape from the weight of our childless existence. I realized I had scarcely been out alone since our wedding day, my life consumed by infertility treatments. But a little indulgence now and then couldn't hurt, right? At the venue, catching up with old friends felt refreshing. Lisa, long time no see. You look great, slimmer than before, one friend remarked. Indeed, I had shed about 22 pounds over the past decade. Thanks, I replied with a smile. I envy you. Since marriage and kids, I've gained almost 33 pounds, she lamented. Her words, though innocent, stung a bit. Any kids for you? Another friend asked. No, we couldn't, I replied, feeling the weight of the question. Just the 2 of us. Oh, sorry for asking such an awkward question, she apologized. No worries. Let's just enjoy ourselves, I reassured, trying to maintain a lively atmosphere. As conversation flowed, a startling revelation emerged. My son was nearly caught in a marriage scam recently, one classmate shared. I was taken aback. A scam? Yes, they asked him for $20,000 for their wedding, but it fell through, she explained. What happened next? I inquired, intrigued. He couldn't afford it, so he came to us for advice. That's when we uncovered the scam. The woman vanished, she recounted. It's terrifying, I murmured, shaken by the story. There are some awful people out there, another friend chimed in. Really scary. A marriage scam, I mused, shocked that such deceit could occur so close to home. Thankfully, her son had moved on with a new girlfriend, and the parents seemed relieved. The reunion continued smoothly, eventually winding down. Instead of heading to the after party, I decided to head home, reflecting on the evening's unexpected revelations. I returned to my hotel, savoring a nightcap alone. It struck me, I hadn't checked in with my husband. It was only 10 p.m. He should still be awake. Despite repeated calls, he didn't answer. Perhaps he already turned in. Well, I'd be back tomorrow, so it wasn't a pressing concern. Yet an uneasy feeling gnawed at me. Was it women's intuition? Something felt off. From then on, my husband started arriving home unusually late on weekdays, often inebriated. Hey, I'm home, he slurred one night, collapsing onto the living room floor. Are you okay? I asked, concern creeping into my voice. Shut up, I'm home. Show some respect, he retorted, his words clouded by alcohol. As I tidied up his discarded clothes, he muttered something about Alyssa. You know, if you were as young as Alyssa. Confusion gripped me. Who was Alyssa? What did he mean by his words? Before I could inquire further, he was already asleep. Could he be cheating on me? The unease I felt that day morphed into a creeping certainty. But no, my husband was a good man. It must be drunken nonsense. Yet doubts lingered, unsettling my thoughts. I tried to reassure myself, but my husband's erratic behavior gnawed at me. Weekends meant early departures and late returns, often accompanied by the stench of alcohol. It had become a pattern I could no longer ignore. You're going out drinking almost every day lately. Are we okay? I ventured one evening. Mind your own business. It's my money, he snapped back, dismissive of my concern. But we need to save for our future, I insisted. His response cut deep. Well, I've spent quite a bit on treatments. That's because you're defective. Even in his inebriated state, his words stung. I could have fathomed he'd speak to me that way. As time passed, his disparaging remarks grew more frequent. Since you can't have kids, you should focus on showing affection to me, he'd say. With each selfish act, my love for him waned. Gone was the caring husband who once supported me through treatments. Would he ever return? After 20 years, I began questioning the essence of our marriage. But before I could confront him about it, he dropped a bombshell. We need to talk, he said, his demeanor serious. I returned from work to find him on the sofa, his expression grave. What's wrong? Why are you being so formal? I asked, sensing something was amiss. I want a divorce, he declared bluntly. The words hit me like a ton of bricks. You're joking, right? Why would you say that all of a sudden? I pleaded, hoping for reassurance. But the idea of divorce had never crossed his mind before. Yes, he confirmed, leaving me stunned and bewildered. The revelation hit me like a tidal wave. Divorce? Had my husband been considering it all along? I confronted him, desperate for clarity. Out of the blue, you want a divorce? What's going on? I demanded, my emotions raw. We've been together for 20 years, haven't we? Let's talk this through, I urged, hoping for understanding. But he met my plea with contempt. You're clueless, aren't you? He scoffed, his tone laced with bitterness. Confusion clouded my mind. What do you mean? For 20 years, I've wanted children, but because of you, I've been denied that chance, he accused, his words cutting deep. His revelation blindsided me. That's not fair. We decided together to stop treatments, I countered, feeling the weight of sadness and frustration. I was never okay with that. I've always wanted a child, he confessed, his voice heavy with regret. Tears threatened to spill as the reality sank in. Well, if you sign the divorce papers, I won't have anything else to say, he declared proudly, pushing the papers toward me. But his next words struck like lightning. I've already decided to remarry. Remarry? With a 20-year-old? I gasped, disbelief coursing through me. That's right. Alyssa, he confirmed, a smug satisfaction in his tone. Alyssa, the name echoed in my mind, the same name he had mentioned before. Woman's intuition, it seemed, was not to be underestimated. I felt a flicker of self-satisfaction, but I knew it wasn't the time for indulgence. Then my husband showed me a picture of his so-called adorable Alyssa. As I examined it closely, I struggled to contain my laughter. Surely, this had to be a joke. How could something like this be real? I prayed he didn't notice my odd reaction and swiftly composed myself. So, you really want a child that badly? I questioned, masking my incredulity. Yes, because you can't give birth. There's nothing we can do about that, right? You'll agree to the divorce, won't you? He pressed, oblivious to my internal turmoil. I suppose there's no choice, I replied, feigning distress, though secretly his sheer idiocy made the decision easier. With each passing moment, the thought of divorcing him grew more appealing. It felt like divine intervention guiding me toward the right path. With a heavy heart, or so I pretended, I signed the divorce papers and left him behind. I couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. Surely, he would regret his actions soon enough. Time would tell. Fast forward a year after the divorce, and I encountered him on my way home from work. His appearance shocked me. Lisa, please help me, he pleaded, his shabby appearance a stark contrast to the man I once knew. Excuse me, who are you? I asked, genuinely not recognizing him. It's me, Lisa. I need your help, he insisted, desperation evident in his voice. I hesitated, taken aback by his transformation. Long time no see, I finally managed, unsure of how to react. In that moment, I realized the tables had turned. It was now his turn to seek assistance, and I held all the cards. Please introduce me to your company's lawyer, he implored, his request a humbling reminder of his downfall. I couldn't just agree to help out of the blue. It seemed my ex-husband was facing financial troubles. I had sensed it from his appearance, but I never imagined he would change so drastically within a year. If it's your first consultation, it's free, but to hire them, you'll have to pay their fee, I explained, trying to navigate the situation. I don't have that kind of money. Please help me, he pleaded, desperation evident in his voice. Perplexed by his sudden predicament, I decided to hear him out. We found ourselves in a nearby cafe where he began to share his story. Well, actually, he started, but before he could finish, I interjected. Did that girl Alyssa run off? I asked, a sudden realization dawning on me. How did you know? He responded, surprise evident in his voice. Just as I suspected. When you showed me a picture of a girl named Alyssa, it clicked. She looked exactly like the one who killed a classmate's son at a reunion, I explained, recalling the warning given by the classmate about a woman named Sally, approximately 22 years old. Her age and name are probably fake, of course. The swindler wouldn't use her real name, I added, connecting the dots. Of course you knew about Alyssa, didn't you? He questioned, realization settling in. Well, I guess you could say I knew. But what happened? I inquired, eager to unravel the full story. When I pressed my husband for an explanation, this was the story he offered. About a year ago, he met a woman named Alyssa at a nightclub. My husband, who had always harbored a desire for children, seemed to have shared his thoughts with her. It was during one of these conversations that Alyssa made an astonishing offer. She could bear a child for him. Their relationship blossomed from there. He started frequenting the club almost every weekday and spent weekends with Alyssa outside its confines. In the process, he depleted $10,000 from his savings, accumulated during his single days. Despite this, Alyssa never demanded lavish gifts or expensive outings. She was content just to share a drink with him at the club. She was different, he insisted. Not like the stereotypical club girls you often hear about. She didn't care about designer goods or jewelry. She was happy as long as I was there with her. He painted Alyssa as hardworking and sincere, emphasizing their agreement not to touch each other's savings from their single days. I thought it was his money and he could use it as he pleased, I admitted, unaware of his extravagant spending. Then my husband revealed the twist in the tale. Alyssa's true colors had emerged. I want to get married, but I had debts totaling about $20,000. Then my husband promised to take on Alyssa's debt and transferred the money to her, I recounted, my voice heavy with regret. They moved in together right after our divorce, but Alyssa continued her nighttime work and rarely came home. Eventually, she quit her job at the club and disappeared, taking all the money with her. How could he be so foolish? I lamented, feeling a sense of despair at having been married to such a man for 20 years. Did you make a promissory note? I inquired, hoping for some semblance of responsibility. A what? My husband looked puzzled. You lent her money, didn't you? Didn't you get a note? I pressed, frustration creeping into my tone. We were going to be a couple, so I didn't do such a thing, he admitted. So, you basically gave her the money, is that it? I asked incredulously. In this case, it seems like you donated $20,000 to Alyssa out of goodwill, I concluded, my disappointment palpable. This woman must be a pro, I mused, realizing the extent of her deception. In the case of donations, if the amount exceeds $11,000 in a year, gift tax is imposed. Depending on the case, the receiver might be taxed. So, Alyssa just took $20,000 in cash and vanished, splitting the money into 2 parts across 2 different years to avoid taxes. The reason my husband thought she was a good girl who never asked for material gifts was because she knew the law well. So, what should I do? I asked, feeling overwhelmed. I don't know. Maybe consult a lawyer. It'll cost you though, he replied, his shoulders slumping in defeat. All my savings from my single days are gone, and the woman I loved ran away from me. I can't go back on my word to the company about remarrying after boasting about getting a younger wife. Isn't that his own doing? I thought, feeling the weight of my husband's pitiful situation. Lisa, it's my fault. Please come back to me, he pleaded. I realized after you were gone, you were the only one who cared about me. I don't need kids anymore. I'll let you do as you like. You must have been lonely too, right? But his misunderstanding persisted. That matter had ended half a year ago in my mind, so I confronted him with reality. You know, it's been a year. What's with this sudden change of heart? Isn't it a little too late now? Lisa, are you going to abandon me? Well, it was you who pushed for our divorce in the first place, remember? I reminded him. You're the only one I can rely on. My ex-husband looked utterly exhausted, and I decided to show him a little mercy. All right then, shall I call up a lawyer friend of mine? Lisa, thank you. I knew I could count on you, he said, tears welling up in his eyes. Mr. Johnson, the lawyer for my company, arrived at the coffee shop. John, over here, I called out, and my ex-husband seemed somewhat perplexed by our overly familiar demeanor. You see, we've been dating for the past 6 months now, I explained. What was it you needed advice on? As I finished speaking, my ex-husband looked as if he was in a daze. No, well, I think that'll be it for today, he muttered, suddenly snapping back to reality and hurriedly leaving the coffee shop. In the end, he couldn't afford to hire a lawyer and resigned himself to his fate. Rumor had it that his company was abuzz with talk of his unfortunate situation, left by his soon-to-be wife and ignored by his ex-wife. As Mr. Johnson and I spoke later, I confessed the truth about the charade. I'm sorry for involving you in all this, I apologized. No worries, Lisa. I'm glad I could be of help, he reassured me. By the way, do you have any plans after this? Caught off guard by the unexpected turn of events, I was a little flustered, but a fresh start in my mid-40s didn't seem like such a bad beginning. Yes, I'd love to, I agreed, certain that a fun-filled future was awaiting me. I couldn't shake off this feeling of excitement. Do I know you? Are you a friend of my husband from his middle school days? I asked, eyeing the stranger warily. I'm sorry, but you need to leave right now, I insisted, my voice firm and resolute. I'm Jackson, the man introduced himself, seemingly unaffected by my demand. I'm 33 and currently single. Today marked the wedding day of my colleague Lucas, who also happened to be a close friend. As I mingled with guests, a man who claimed to be a relative of Bryce, the groom, approached me and ushered me towards a waiting area just before the ceremony. Physically imposing and with a firm grip, the man guided me forcefully with his strong arms, leaving me feeling uneasy about his intentions. Thinking that perhaps the bride wanted to extend a pre-ceremony greeting, I followed the relative, assuming goodwill. Initially, I admired her apparent courtesy, but that admiration swiftly soured. It became evident that my presence was not welcome for congenial purposes, but rather as a means of coercion. The bride, waiting in the anteroom, wore a malevolent expression that sent a shiver down my spine. Momentarily taken aback, I managed to compose myself and offered my congratulations. Congratulations on your wedding, I said, trying to maintain a semblance of normalcy. Her response was abrupt and commanding. "You need to leave immediately," she ordered, leaving no room for argument. "What?" I blurted out in disbelief, unable to contain my reaction to the bride's statement. Her response to my question was exasperatingly patronizing. "This is precisely why dealing with uneducated individuals is such a hassle," she muttered under her breath, the disdain evident in her tone. It was clear that the bride harbored disdain for my educational background, or rather, the lack thereof. She didn't mince her words as she elaborated. "Allow me to clarify. My husband and I hail from esteemed lineage, and today's guests belong to the elite echelons of society. Your presence as a mere high school graduate is jarring and distasteful to me." The implications were not lost on me. My educational background had become a source of embarrassment in their esteemed circles. Naturally, I was aware of Lucas's prestigious background and the disdain some harbor towards those without extensive academic credentials. It wasn't a new experience for me. I'd encountered similar attitudes before. Despite this, my bond with Lucas transcended such superficial judgments, prompting me to attend his wedding. My sole intention was to partake in the joyous occasion and celebrate my friend's union. However, the bride's blatant disdain towards me, a guest she deemed unworthy, cast a shadow over the festivities. Feeling increasingly uncomfortable, I inquired if I could offer Lucas a few words of congratulation before taking my leave. The reaction from the bride and her relatives was immediate and explosive. Feeling overwhelmed by the tension and animosity, I couldn't help but mutter, "This is all a bit too much for me." Confused by their laughter in what seemed like a serious moment, I dared to inquire about the reason behind their amusement. The bride's response stunned me beyond belief. "My husband didn't invite you here out of friendship, but rather out of pity," she declared matter-of-factly. As she continued, the pieces of an unexpected puzzle started to fall into place. Despite my bewilderment, she proceeded, delving into the depths of my troubled past, one marked by parental abandonment and a childhood spent in the confines of an orphanage. She went on to explain how my struggles with malnutrition had left a lasting impact, evident in my tall yet slender frame even into adulthood. The revelation left me speechless, realizing that Lucas's invitation to his wedding was not an act of camaraderie, but rather an expression of empathy towards a former classmate enduring ongoing hardship. The bride jumped to a startling conclusion, assuming Lucas's invitation was an attempt to provide me with a meal at the wedding. I tried to reason with her, explaining the impossibility of such a scenario, but my protest fell on deaf ears. In a tone laced with disdain, she proceeded to belittle my worth, emphasizing the stark disparity between Lucas's accomplishments and mine. According to her, Lucas's compassion could potentially elevate his status, but she couldn't fathom allowing someone with only a middle school education to attend her wedding. She highlighted Lucas's prestigious academic background and successful career, contrasting it sharply with my own humble position as a janitor or security guard in the same company. The bride's words stung with contempt as she dismissed any notion of Lucas feeling sorry for me simply because we were former classmates. To her, the idea was preposterous, bordering on outrageous. We're both employed by the same company, one that's recently entered the public domain and shows considerable promise. It's a sought-after workplace, topping the charts for job seekers. Our company policy prioritizes talent acquisition, meaning individuals deemed valuable can join regardless of academic background. Despite the company's prestige, I acknowledge the disparity between a junior high school graduate like myself and a college-educated colleague. Yet, regardless of the motives behind Lucas's invitation, I simply wish to extend my congratulations. I harbored no expectations in return. However, earnestly articulate my sentiments and plead my case, the bride remains resolutely unyielding. Her gaze is consistently cold, as though regarding something unsavory. It's as if she's reluctant to even share the same airspace with me. She dismisses my heartfelt expressions of friendship with disdainful indifference. "Are you trying to cozy up to my husband and snag a job with just a junior high school diploma?" Her words weren't just a rejection of my presence at their wedding. They hinted at potential repercussions in the workplace. Caught off guard, I struggled to find a response. Despite the company's acceptance of individuals with minimal education, I couldn't bring myself to accept such condescension, especially from the spouse of my colleague. Suddenly, a male relative's actions escalated the tension further. Ignoring my protests, he forcibly grabbed at me, his actions invasive and aggressive. Attempting to fend him off, I reached for his arm, but he forcefully pushed me against the wall. A sharp pain shot through my back and chest, eliciting a low, guttural growl of pain. "Enough, just leave," the relative barked before completing its sentence, abruptly opening the door to the waiting room. I was unceremoniously ejected, landing on the floor with a resounding thud. Despite the rough treatment, I resolved to carry on without offering my congratulations to Lucas. Preferring not to risk being barred from the wedding altogether, I sought refuge in a nearby cafe, biding my time before rejoining the festivities with the other guests. As the wedding reception commenced, I settled into my seat, hoping to blend in unnoticed. However, the bride's penetrating gaze soon found me. Without uttering a word, her lips moved silently, forming a single question directed at me. "What are you doing here?" The bride's expression shifted as the relative man spotted me. With determination, he lunged towards me, seizing my arm in an attempt to forcibly remove me. However, this time, I wasn't going to be ejected so easily. Nearby attendees sprang to action, rallying around me, shielding me from the relative's grasp. Panic flashed across the relative's face as he struggled to comprehend the situation. Sensing the urgency, the bride seemed equally flustered. Seizing the moment, I grabbed hold of a nearby microphone and addressed the bride, who remained bewildered by the unfolding events. "Bride, I owe you an apology for my earlier words. My desire to witness Lucas's wedding led me here today," I declared loudly, ensuring my message reached her despite the chaos surrounding us. Lucas, seated at the head table, overheard our exchange and interjected with confusion and concern. "What's happening here? What's all this about?" he demanded. The bride, visibly shaken by Lucas's unexpected intrusion, responded in a tremulous voice, "It's nothing, just go back to your seat, Lucas." With a hint of desperation, she added, "I asked Jackson to leave because he only has a junior high school education. It wouldn't be a good match for us, Lucas." Feeling a sense of resignation, I addressed the bride, who appeared lost in her own distress. "I apologize for any inconvenience I've caused. If it's what you desire, I'll sever all professional ties with Lucas. Please forgive me for any disruption I've caused." A hush descended over the entire hall as my declaration hung in the air. The bride was the first to break the silence. "What? Fired? What's going on?" Lucas's voice quivered with confusion. "You? What did you just say?" Recognition dawned on Jackson's face as he processed my words. "That's correct. I am Jackson, the president of our company," I affirmed, my tone steady. "I may have only graduated from junior high school, but I founded a delivery company at the age of 16. With nothing but a bicycle, I transformed it into a major corporation over the span of a decade. And in response to changing consumer habits, we swiftly transitioned into a publicly traded entity. Lucas wasn't just a friend to me. He was a lifeline, a source of unwavering support when I needed it most. He shared his meals with me, showing kindness and compassion during times when I struggled with malnutrition. Raised in an orphanage until the age of 15, I lacked the familial stability that Lucas enjoyed from the age of 12, when he was adopted by his current parents. Despite our different upbringings, Lucas and I remained close even after our paths diverged geographically. When we embarked on the journey of entrepreneurship together, Lucas vowed to dedicate himself to our shared vision. Witnessing his transformation from a shy individual to a confident groom filled me with immense joy. My determination to congratulate Lucas stemmed from a deep-rooted friendship and gratitude. I remained steadfast even in the face of the bride's objections. Unbeknownst to me, the bride's disdain stemmed from my educational background. Yet I was unaware that being a junior high school graduate didn't preclude me from holding a significant position within our company. The authority to terminate employees rested with me, a fact that the bride herself had acknowledged when she requested I sever ties with Lucas. I gently assured her that I had complied with her wishes. In response, she uttered a cold remark, confirming Lucas's termination. The bride, previously frozen in shock, muttered disdainfully, "Fired? If you're such a failure, I have no use for you." Without hesitation, she renounced the marriage entirely, citing my lack of elite status and high income as deal breakers. It was a startling turn of events as she promptly called off the engagement with Lucas, who had just been dismissed from his job. The attendees erupted in uproar at her abrupt declaration. Amidst the chaos, any semblance of our previously amicable relationship vanished. Accusations flew as she labeled the situation a marriage scam, demanding compensation from Lucas for the broken engagement. Lucas's revulsion was palpable in the midst of the chaos. Quietly, I reached out and tapped the bride on the shoulder as she continued to raise her voice. Leaning in, I whispered, "You might want to start saving that for alimony payments." With that, I initiated a video playback on the projector, revealing footage captured by a phone I had strategically left recording in the bride's waiting room. The recording, inadvertently triggered when a male relative manhandled me, potentially held crucial evidence of my injury. As I was pushed against the wall, the phone fell, continuing to record. What it captured was damning. The bride's indiscretion with the same male relative in the waiting room. As the ceremony commenced, I retraced my steps to the waiting room in search of the phone I suspected I had dropped. To my relief, I discovered it nestled in a corner, untouched. However, the shock of what I witnessed upon playing back the recording left me reeling. Witnessing such deceitful behavior on what should have been a sacred occasion shook me to the core. It was difficult to comprehend how anyone could stoop to such lows. Driven by a sense of moral obligation, I immediately sought out Lucas to disclose the damning evidence. The revelation of the bride's true nature sparked a fiery reaction from Lucas's relatives, who unleashed their fury upon the bride's family. In response, the bride's relatives vehemently denied any association with the man implicated in the recording. They adamantly refused to acknowledge any connection to him. It later emerged that the man accompanying the bride was nothing more than an unfaithful partner. Despite his charming demeanor, he was essentially a freeloader, lacking any meaningful employment. The bride, yearning for a life of prestige and sophistication within an educated family, sought to elevate her status by securing a marriage with Lucas, a gentle and unassuming man. Her intentions were revealed to be far from genuine, painting her in a negative light. In contrast, Lucas, dedicated to his studies and somewhat naive in matters of love, possessed a trusting nature that left him vulnerable to manipulation. Ultimately, I'm grateful that my humble education allowed me to see through the deceitful intentions of those involved. Never did I anticipate that my educational background would prove valuable in such a manner. The deceitful bride faced the consequences of her actions, being ordered to pay a hefty sum of $5 million for wedding expenses and an additional $3 million for terminating the engagement, accumulating the staggering debt of $8 million. As a result of the humiliation she endured, she found herself isolated from her family. Her unfaithful partner, alarmed by the overwhelming debt, fled the scene, leaving her to face the repercussions alone. With her once inviolable life now in shambles, the bride was forced into a solitary existence, residing in a rundown apartment and toiling tirelessly day and night in a desperate attempt to repay her debts. The arrival of the deceitful woman inadvertently strengthened the bond between Lucas and me, fostering a deeper friendship as we navigated through the ordeal. Meanwhile, our company experienced a period of rapid and steady growth. Observing Lucas's enduring desire for marriage, I contemplated accompanying him to a matchmaking event in the future. Hannah, I cooked your family together today. As your husband, please don't mess up the cooking. I'm expecting great hospitality. Roy, thanks, but I just had twins and came back from the hospital. It would have been nice if you considered that. What? Talking back to me, it doesn't matter that you just had babies. Having kids is what a wife should do. Don't use giving birth as an excuse. Just cook quietly. 1 week after leaving the hospital with the twins, Roy invited 15 family members to his parents' house to celebrate. I should be happy, but it seems he wants to take advantage of me after giving birth. I was really tired of my husband's behavior. I wanted to throw my phone at him, but I didn't want to ruin everything. So, I calmly said, I'll start preparing everything now, but I'll need your parents' help. Getting help from my parents? Not possible. They're working in another country. Yes, as my husband mentioned, his parents couldn't come to today's family event because they're abroad. He seemed to think less of me, but he didn't know everything. I was already planning my revenge. After a quick chuckle, I went outside and returned to my in-laws' house in 5 minutes. Roy was surprised and asked, Hannah, who are these people? I don't know them. Why are you bringing strangers here? It was no wonder he was shocked. These two weren't family, but they were related to him. Let me introduce Ben and Claire. They're helping with today's preparations. You must be Roy. We've been looking forward to meeting you. We know a lot about you. Looking forward to meeting me. But both Ben and Claire seemed serious, despite being polite. They gave my husband icy stares. Confused, Roy whispered to me, Come here for a moment, Hannah. He took me to a quiet place, looking confused. He demanded, What are you doing? It's crazy to invite strangers without asking me. How will you explain this to everyone? There's no time. Get rid of them and start cooking now. Like always, he tried to scare me with his tough talk. But today, I wasn't going to let him win. I stared back at him, sure of myself. No need to worry. Everything's set. Actually, I'm planning to confront you with your mistress's parents here. What? My mistress's parents? Them? Roy, you said they were strangers, outsiders, but that's because you didn't know. I do. I kept calm, just telling the truth. Roy was shocked and then got angry. What you mean by my mistress's parents? I haven't cheated, and why are you acting like this? Are you disrespecting me? He got louder and raised his fist. It was so loud that the family might hear. It was clear he wasn't calm. What's happening, Roy? I heard shouting. Is everything okay? Oh, it's nothing, just a little argument with the wife. She's stressed because of the babies, he said, forcing a smile and hinting for me to leave. What a weak man. I followed his orders for so long, but not anymore. I went back to the living room where everyone was. After a big breath, I started my comeback. Here we go. Roy, you'll regret this. Everyone, thanks for coming today. I have something to say. I'm divorcing Roy. The happy mood disappeared in a flash. What? People were confused in my in-laws' house. But I kept smiling. You've all been fooled by Roy. He's not the good guy you think. He's a coward who bullies his wife secretly. He looks good outside, so you didn't notice. I found out just a year ago. People whispered, but Roy's uncle stood up. What's happening, Hannah? Divorcing right after having babies? And it's hard to believe Roy would trick us. He even said he was cooking for you today. I'm sorry for surprising you, but I'm just telling the truth. When I got pregnant, Roy changed. He made me work hard even though I was pregnant. Even today, he wanted me to cook. He's always lying. I looked at Roy. He looked blank. It seemed like he was trying to hide his true self. But I knew what he was thinking. Don't say too much. You know what will happen later, his face seemed to say, even though he looked angry but blank. But I kept talking. Roy kept telling me that it's normal for a wife to get pregnant and have babies. I work and provide for you, he'd say. He used these words to treat me badly. He never showed this side of him before we got married. His parents and our relatives looked surprised, but they knew I wasn't joking. So confusion spread. Then Roy stepped forward. He took a deep breath and forced a smile. It seems there's a misunderstanding. I'm not perfect. Maybe I've been too harsh to my wife. But I've taken care of her a lot. Unfortunately, she only remembers the bad things, and what she's saying isn't true. Maybe she's not thinking clearly after having the babies. I wish I could have supported her better as a husband. As Roy gave a sad smile, the relatives felt sorry for him. He's so good at looking good, I thought, but not anymore. You're really good at winning people over. No wonder you're important at your dad's company, someone said. Hannah, I know you're upset, but it's not right to confuse everyone like this. Let's talk calmly later. Roy held my hand gently, trying to stop me, but I looked at a corner, signaling what to do next. The couple stood up. No need for that. Look at these photos, they said. What? You're still here. And what are those photos? They showed the relatives some pictures. The relatives were surprised to see these strangers but still looked at the photos. Suddenly, they gasped in horror. Hey Roy, what's going on? Explain this so I understand. Let me see those photos, I said, taking the photos from his uncle. Roy was silent, looking shocked. The photos showed his cheating, something he never wanted anyone to know. These photos prove Roy's been cheating on me. I knew about his affairs before I went to the hospital and gathered evidence. But I couldn't investigate much while pregnant, so I asked his mistress's parents for help. I'm Ben, and this is my wife, Claire. We're sorry to disrupt the gathering, but we had to clear our daughter's name. Hannah, our daughter Rachel, worked with Roy. She got the job after a lot of effort and was excited to go to work every day. But Roy hurt her deeply, Ben said, his voice filled with emotion. Claire choked up and Ben put his hand on her shoulder, leering at my husband. Rachel told us she met a great guy. She was born when my wife was 40, so you can imagine how happy we were. But to Roy, Rachel was just a fling. He lied about being single and fooled her even though she was much younger. When Rachel found out he was married, she got really depressed. We'll never forgive Roy. A silence filled the room. The relatives looked at the photos again and then turned to my husband. Their trust in him seemed to vanish. Hold on, are you all believing these old folks? Photos can be faked. They might just want money. We were surprised they're here too, but would they really lie at a family gathering? I can't believe this, my husband said. But if you're innocent, stay calm. And calling them old? That's not nice, I said, trying to calm him down. It was clear he was losing control, showing his true colors. Our plan was working, and his panic showed it. Suddenly, someone slapped my husband. Everyone gasped, especially my husband, who looked shocked. Hey Roy, long time no see. Hi, everyone. It's been a while, Mom, Dad. What are you doing here? Weren't you supposed to be overseas? There was something important, so we rushed back, my father-in-law said. Well, you came back just in time. Hannah's saying weird stuff. She's making everyone think I'm the bad guy. I didn't do anything wrong. She must be losing it, my husband said, but the in-laws just looked at him, not saying a word. You know, they talk about postpartum depression. Maybe you should go to the hospital, get checked out by specialists, and rest. Then you'll listen to me like before, my husband said, trying to convince them. He thought their silence meant they agreed. Looks like Mom and Dad get it. That's good. Oh, I'm thirsty. Hannah, water, he said. His mom quietly gave him a water bottle. He looked surprised but drank it anyway. Then my father-in-law dropped a bomb. Roy, you're fired from the company, he said. My husband spit out his water, shocked. A relative nearby frowned as he wiped his clothes. What, Dad? Why are you joking about this? Decide if it's a joke after looking at this. Is this a call on speaker? I'm the one who called. I had your parents listen from the start, everything on speaker. Why? Because I needed their help. As soon as I realized who you really are, I knew I had to tell them. Plus, I've recorded all the times you've treated me badly during my pregnancy. I let them hear it all. And today's conversation is recorded too. I played the recordings. The phone played our conversation. Roy, today, I've gathered our family for you as my wife. Don't embarrass me with your cooking. I'm expecting top-notch hospitality. Thank you, Roy, but you know I just gave birth to twins and was discharged from the hospital. A little consideration would have been nice. What? Talking back, it doesn't matter that you just gave birth. Besides, having children is a basic duty of a wife. Don't use postpartum as an excuse. Just cook quietly. When my husband insulted me, I really wanted to throw my phone at him. But I stopped myself because it would ruin everything. The reason I endured his insults was because I was recording them. I made sure the recording was on when I called my parents from my in-laws' house. You were recording, Hannah. Why were you sneaking around? Roy asked. I don't want to hear about sneaking around from someone who bullies his wife and cheats. And if I didn't do this, Roy would try to deny everything. I replied, Roy, we know everything. We came back secretly today. We listened to your statements on speakerphone and confirmed your true nature. My parents said, we didn't doubt you, Hannah, but as parents, we wanted to believe in Roy. And this is what happened. Now, it's your turn to explain. Why did you cheat, Hannah, when Roy was supporting you so well? As my father-in-law spoke, my husband seemed to lose his confidence. Working at his father-in-law's company, he saw him as an authority figure. He must have realized his father-in-law wouldn't accept any excuses. He started to speak hesitantly. I only got married to make you happy. Honestly, I never really wanted to get married. But I knew you were worried about my future. I thought marrying someone like Hannah would ease your concerns, he confessed. The in-laws and other relatives frowned and looked at him coldly. Feeling the tension, he quickly pleaded, please don't fire me. I'm an important asset to the company, right? If I'm fired, it'll cause chaos. I'll change, I promise. Please reconsider. As soon as he finished begging, there was a loud thud in the room. His father had slammed his fist down on the nearby table. You scoundrel. After getting Hannah pregnant, you dared to play with the emotions of an innocent girl, pretending to be single. How dare you? Your presence only brings chaos to the company. I can't trust you to run it. I'm deeply disappointed in you. You act selfishly without caring about others' feelings. That's not how I raised you. Do you understand? My father-in-law's voice was filled with anger and disappointment. And you married just for appearances? How disgraceful. Don't think you can easily regain our trust. I'm cutting ties with you. Don't show your face here again. What? But I've worked so hard. Are you serious? My husband looked more hopeless than I'd ever seen him. I knew he'd put a lot of effort into the company. It was understandable for him to be shocked that it all amounted to nothing. But it was his own fault. He tried to play the victim, but he was the one who caused all of this. As he hung his head, I gave him a cold look and he immediately knelt before me. Hannah, please talk to your parents too. If I lose my job, it'll be hard for both of us, right? I'll really change. Please help me, Hannah. We're still married. How convenient for you to play the husband card now. As I've already told everyone, I'm divorcing you. No matter how much you apologize, I can't forgive you. And they feel the same way, I said, looking at my parents. They nodded in agreement. He bit his lip and turned to them. I'm really sorry for hurting your daughter. I'll apologize as many times as it takes. He kept apologizing, but they didn't agree. No matter what he said, we wouldn't forgive him right now. He was still hiding something terrible while saying sorry. He was still trying to trick us. It's too bad, Roy. You're still pretending. If he'd been honest, things might have been different. But like I've said, we know everything now. There's no going back, I said, smirking. He looked at me, stunned. Pretending? How can you say I'm not sincere? On what basis? He asked, confused. You embezzled company funds, didn't you? And then you used that money to hire thugs to threaten Rachel to keep her quiet about your true self. You wanted to silence her, right? I accused. You're crazy. I would never do something like that without proof. Making such wild accusations without evidence, that's absurd, he protested. Your parents have been investigating and have proof. That's why they're here. I've also talked to Rachel herself. I even have the voice recorder she had. Should I play it now? It clearly records you threatening her, I said. He paled and nervously glanced at his parents-in-law. Their stares were icy. Roy, stop fighting a losing battle. The truth will come out soon. This alone is enough for you to be fired, they said. Cheating is one thing, but embezzlement and blackmail change everything. I didn't know the extent of it all. Roy, you always underestimated me. You thought I was useless. But with everyone's help, we've come this far. And I'll protect our baby. I won't let you manipulate me anymore, I declared. I made my final statement. Listen carefully. I'm divorcing you. No amount of apology will change that. You'll also be paying child support. We'll seek damages from Roy too. Rachel's lost time can't be undone, so at least be sincere in compensating her. Wait. I don't have that kind of money. Can someone please help me? Roy pleaded. He looked around, but received only cold stares. Slowly, one by one, the relatives began to leave, ignoring him completely. In just one day, he lost everything. Soon after, my divorce from Roy was finalized. I managed to secure almost the amount I hoped for in child support, which was a relief. They filed a lawsuit against Roy, as promised, and the company conducted its investigation into the embezzlement. Roy found himself drowning in debt, seeking help from me, his parents-in-law, and other relatives. But no one offered assistance. With the news of his embezzlement spreading, no company would hire him. Eventually, he resorted to borrowing from payday lenders, struggling day by day to pay off his debts. My in-laws apologized to me once more, assuring me of their protection from Roy's harm. They promised to keep an eye on him and always support me. I'm incredibly grateful to them. Right now, the thought of marriage doesn't appeal to me, but if I ever reconsider, I'd want a partnership like theirs. That's how I feel. A few years later, the twins have grown up and started kindergarten, which has made a big difference in our lives. They even help with household chores now and support me in every way they can. I've completely cut ties with my ex-husband, but I still keep in touch with his parents. They introduced me to a company owned by a friend of theirs, the president of which is a single mother who raised her son alone. She's created a workplace that's supportive of single mothers. They've been understanding of my situation, offering flexible work arrangements. Rachel also works there. She's successfully reintegrated into society and is now a beloved figure in the office with her radiant smile. It's no surprise her parents stood by her. Seeing their dedication to their daughter, I have a lot to learn from them as a parent. Rachel is eager to repay her parents, and I'm also working hard every day to repay my in-laws' kindness. Though there are still challenges ahead, seeing my children's smiles instantly comforts me. I cherish every moment spent with them and am grateful to have them in my life amidst all the difficulties. Sometimes I think back to something my ex-husband used to say, that having children is just a wife's duty. But as I watch my children grow, I realize how extraordinary it all is. Pregnancy and childbirth are sacred and bring immense joy. While this experience has left deep scars, it has also taught me something valuable. For the sake of my children and myself, I want to keep moving forward and live life to the fullest.